Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, joined in studio by my co-host Justin Baker, as usual, and Luke Paul, my brother, and future host of Overtime Leafs Talk, as we begin to roll out some exciting new things here on Overtime Hockey Talk. Today on the show, we are going to break down the entire Toronto Maple Leafs Columbus Blue Jackets series, the 8-9. For these two 8-9s, we're going to do separate shows because I think these are the magical series of the first round. I mean, there are no tighter series than Leafs Blue Jackets, and then in the Western Conference with the Jets and the Flames. So we figured we'd take some extra time to dive into these series. That's why we've got a guest, Luke, for this one, and then we also have a guest for our Flames Jets one as well. So stay tuned for that. But to start off the show, I think as we've done previously, we've broken down everything from offensively, defensively, and from the goaltending position. Before we do that, I just want to get your take, both of you, on the Columbus Blue Jackets were a team that really struggled. They had a lot of injuries. Here they find themselves, they're in the playoffs, and they are probably underranked. Maybe same with the Leafs a little bit, as they, maybe where in the beginning of the year should have been a little bit better than what they were in the regular season. So these are really two powerhouse teams going at it. Where do you think the Columbus Blue Jackets, fully healthy, should have found themselves in the standings coming into these playoffs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that they honestly probably could have been up kind of in that 6-7 region. They started off, I think they started off pretty slow, and as they got some of their guys back, they were, I think in the end, just a powerhouse coming into the end of the regular season. So that's kind of where I put them.
Yeah, I think when you look at Columbus, we know what Toronto is. We knew what we were going to get out of them this season. I think you expected them to compete for a top 3 spot in that division. But with Columbus, it was different because you're losing so much superstar power. And this is a team that traditionally hasn't had superstars, right? So you're losing a Matt Duchene, you're losing Sergei Bobrovsky and Artemi Panarin. So you lose these elements that basically, you're losing an entire first line essentially from this team. And now you have to come in, and thank goodness they got John Tortorella behind the bench. To me is, going to be one of those Jack Adam candidates. And he manages to put together a team that still plays tight defensively and competes for a spot. Even with all the injuries to guys like Seth Jones, they still manage to churn out the wins, and they get it done by committee, which is just really impressive in my mind. And so coming in, at number 9 in this new seeding is, maybe a little, hidden, cloaked, because they should be, they could be a better team than that. Not to mention the fact that, just a year ago, this is a team that took down the winningest regular season team of all time. Yeah, right up there with the Red Wings, for sure. Tied with the Wings, yeah. 62 wins. And they go, and not only did they beat them, it's one thing, we look back in 2004 when the Oilers beat the Red Wings, an 8 seed beating the 1 seed. I know, that hurts, it stings. We can talk 2013 sometime. Ooh, okay.
The difference is that series, Edmonton goes, they win in 7 games. It was a tight series the whole time. There was a couple X factors in that one, and you look back and you go, the Wings didn't necessarily play terrible. It's just the Oilers, they found a way. They dug in. They won. Dwayne Rollison in that series was crazy.
Dude, he and Chris Pronger, sometimes you get guys that step up and they do it.
Yeah. Whereas it was just total Columbus Blue. It was like the Tampa Bay Lightning forgot how to play hockey. It was a very weird turn of events where the wheels all fell off all at once in a 4-game sweepage. This series, though, I think is going to be incredibly underrated. It's really two teams that are very different. You said it. The Blue Jackets score by committee. There's not a lot of scoring going on. They have one of the worst shooting percentages in the entire league. The only playoff team with a worse shooting percentage is the Dallas Stars in terms of playoff teams, but ranked 28th in shooting percentage for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So they're not loaded with snipers and guys that are going to really scare you from the offensive point of view outside of maybe like a Cam Atkinson. But then you look, the Leafs 27th in save percentage, that .901 save percentage for their team as a whole. Granted, does the backup goaltending position, does Michael Hutchinson bring that save percentage down quite a bit? Yes. But the Blue Jackets sitting at a .916 save percentage, 7th in the league. And so you've got this team who can shoot the lights out, but struggles maybe in the defensive zone, and then quite the opposite for the Blue Jackets. And I'm wondering, coming out of the gate, where, is it easier for a team like the Leafs to be creative, have their offensive side of the game going, and not worry so much about the defensive side, whereas Columbus, maybe because defense takes more of a team effort, you're coming off a lot of rust, can they pick it up where they need to and be able to dive right into the series and play that tight defense that they're going to need to do?
I think off the get-go, we're going to see a lot of goals scored. I think for both teams, but
I think probably just in the playoffs in general.
But, yeah,
it'll be like the regular season where it's just crazy scoring right off the bat because nobody can figure their life out defensively.
Everybody's fresh, excited, ready to go back on the ice.
But just with Toronto's scoring power, I mean, I think that's going to be a challenge for Columbus. I mean, they already have 50 goals more than Columbus, and I think we're going to see just some adjustments. Well, everything's going to be an adjustment, right? Because we're starting off basically fresh. And so I think we're going to come in, we're going to see Toronto come off strong in game one. And quickly, I think Columbus is going to be able to correct their defense, as Tortorella always does. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about it. They're two total opposite teams, right? Toronto's third best in the league at goals for, and Columbus is third best in goals against. And then you look when you take a look a little bit deeper into special teams, right? Obviously, you got a top 10 team in Toronto in terms of power play, and then a top 10 team in Columbus at penalty kill. So who's defense?
Actually, Columbus 12.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. But still,
thanks for correcting me, you asshole.
But whose style of play is going to show up more, Obviously, we know Toronto's got plenty of superstar talent up front to score, but they lack, on defense. Whereas Columbus, just the opposite. They've got superstars back on D with Seth Jones and Werenski, guys who can get it done, but don't really have it up front. So which style of play is really going to dominate in this series? And that, to me, is what makes this series so intriguing, because you got two good coaches, guys that are really going to, push it at each end. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, in terms of special teams, it's going to be interesting. There's a few stats that I think are worth looking at that paint a pretty good picture of what this series could look like. So you pointed out the Leafs' 6th ranked power play, 23% on the power play, which honestly, I think there's some people that think that might be low for the amount of talent that happens to be on their power play is pretty absurd.
If you compare it to Edmonton, who has two superstars,
sure,
but they're 29%.
The Leafs basically have 4.
Yeah, exactly. They have much more forward superstar power up front.
And for some reason, that just doesn't always seem to matter. Sometimes it's you've got who's going to shoot the puck, and that's what you want on your power play. And then other times, you want a bunch of guys who can shoot the puck. It's kind of
right, like Washington, who has one guy that they always try to see him to go to, and it works every time.
And Washington's power play this last year hasn't exactly broken the bank.
Right, not as lethal.
Yeah,
good point. Maybe they do need to go
17th.
To Toronto there and sort of start spreading the wealth.
I would say Columbus's power play is quite bad. It's at 16.4%. They're the only playoff team with a worse power play is the Chicago Blackhawks, and I don't know if that's a team that you're really honing in on as a real playoff team. But hey, they're in the preliminary playoffs. But whereas the penalty kill, the Blue Jackets at 81%, the Leafs at 77%, 12th and 21st ranked. So though they're not as far apart on the penalty killing side, the interesting thing to look at is the power play opportunities against. The Blue Jackets are what I would say first in the league because they have the lowest amount of power play opportunities against, at 169 opportunities. So really, I mean, they're only giving up less than 3 power plays a game for this team. So not only do they play really well defensively, but they do not make many mistakes. They're not taking a lot of power. They're not taking a lot of penalties. And obviously when they do, there's maybe some retaliation. They're not giving up a lot of power plays. And then for power play opportunities, the Leafs are 23rd, the Blue Jackets are 28th. So I think this series is bound to be, and I think we saw it in the games when they played each other, a lot of 5-on-5 play. There are some series where you figure in there's going to be 5 or 6 power plays a team, and like when it's Colorado, you just know they're going to draw penalties. They lead the league in power play opportunities. I mean they've got 60 more power play opportunities than the Blue Jackets. They're drawing an extra penalty a game, which can, if you're scoring at 25% every 4 games, you're scoring an extra goal. That could be the difference in a series if you're scoring that way. So I think this series is bound to be heavy on the 5-on-5 play. Who in the 5-on-5 play, if we just say special teams is likely going to be a wash in this series. 5-on-5, who are you looking at to make a big difference in this series?
Oh, I think easily it's Toronto's the team where you have to focus in on, say, they could be the difference makers. Just one, because when you look at depth up front, right? Each series we've taken a look at in terms of, their depth in forward, defense, and goaltending position. But to me, when you look at Toronto's depth and the forward position, that's where I think the difference is going to be, because, you can throw Seth Jones and Zach Werenski out there all you want as a pair, but eventually you're going to have 5-on-5 play against that second and third pairing for, Columbus's D. And, Ryan Murray, while he's fine defensively, we don't know if he's going to stay healthy the whole entire series, even though it is only 5 games. And, we don't know what the rest of that D-core can do for Columbus when they have to face the speed and offensive prowess that is the Toronto Maple Leafs forward group. And so if you got a guy like William Nylander on that third line, he could go out and destroy some of those defenses very easily on 5-on-5 play.
Yeah.
I think on even the back end of those forward lines. So the fourth line, I think that Toronto actually has some good pieces there, especially with Jason Spezza being there, it being his last year before UFA again. I think that he really wants to win a Stanley Cup with Toronto. So I think you're going to see him step up. And guys like Frederic Gauthier, he has been, playing into his role all year. And I think we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, 5-on-5, the Leafs are just dominant. They're so good. When you look at their possession stats, the Leafs are 6th best in terms of Corsi for percentage, 52.1, whereas the Blue Jackets 49.1, which is the Leafs have control of the puck the majority of the time, and the Blue Jackets do not. And that's just kind of the way that they play anyways. They're definitely not trying to play a steep defensive game. When the Blue Jackets move the puck, they're looking to make very few cross ice passes. This is the league as a whole, but I think the Blue Jackets really hone in on this. I'll never forget when Tortorella was asked, "Well, how did your team play tonight?" And he said, "Well, we only had 2 cross ice passes in the defensive zone all night, so that's how we know we played well." That it's their focus. They do not want their defensemen passing it to each other. They want to move the puck up the ice, which says get the puck out of the zone. They don't mind dumping it in. They are definitely going to, they're definitely more hard-nosed than the Leafs. I think that's, if we look at one area where the Blue Jackets are going to probably hammer on, it's going to be, let's put the body on Marner and Matthews, if you can catch them. I don't think Tavares has as much of a problem getting bumped. Like, he's a guy who you're happy to put in front of the net. He'll take punishment. Matthews, Marner, they're not guys that are really going to be in the corners, driving, digging for the puck the way that the Blue Jackets will definitely want to. So I think that's got to be your focus, is how can we bang up these guys? Like, let's run them. I mean, is there really any other way that you're going to be able to probably win, is to throw the body on them, slow them down quite a bit, and see what you can do. I don't know if at this point of the season that's going to work, because the season's starting. Everyone's fresh. You're not going to catch guys 82 games in, one extra hit, and they're kind of bruised beyond where they're going to be any good.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why the playoffs have always been called, referred to as such a grind, right? You coming off a full 82 game regular season, you're tired, you're maybe a little bit, not as rested, and here you got guys that are getting 90-day breaks now, coming in fresh, they've had plenty of rest. There's no grind in that preliminary, that qualifying round series, of 5, and so are you going to be able to grind it out early? Are you going to be able to put the body on them, or does that not even really matter at this point?
Well, and we also have to remember there's not going to be fans in the stands. And that's a big driver for a lot of these players. So, they're coming in off of a 90-day break or whatever number of days that is. But some of them, I think we're going to see that a little bit slower hockey in the beginning, a little bit sloppy, right? So there's going to be some mistakes.
Sloppy. I don't know if slow.
Right.
I
would agree.
Sloppy. I'm there with you.
I mean, because guys, we don't know what their training has looked like over the summer. I know just from reading and listening from other players, it hasn't been a very strict regimen, because it's the unknown, right? They don't know when they're coming back, and so I think they're going to come into this, yes, sloppy for sure. And I think that depending on the player, depending on where they get their motivation from, which some get it from fans being in the stands screaming and throwing stuff on the ice, and I think
if
that
I don't get an octopus on the ice, I'm garbage.
Right? But yeah,
I can't play.
Yeah, I definitely would say sloppy is for sure. Now, I mean, we're already in phase 2 right now. We're getting groups of 6, I believe it is, now back onto the ice training together. And so, a team like Toronto, for example, for me is where I think this kind of thing is really going to come into play, because you got guys healthy back that maybe all year long haven't been able to put together these lines, right? Obviously, we know guys like Tavares, Marner, Nylander, and Matthews, you've maybe been pairing, 2 of these guys together. But I think now with a fully healthy Toronto team, you're going to get these groups of 6 on the ice where you can say, okay, this is the line we're going in with. This is, you guys can practice together now. And I think there's going to be maybe a little less sloppy than we think, but I still think there's going to be, some sloppiness in terms of just, you're trying to get back up to game speed. And, regardless, I think, there's still going to be a bit of a curve there for the first couple games, no matter what team you are. But in terms of speed, I mean, most of these guys are training, a little bit anyways right now. And I mean, we watch it every regular season. There's not that much of a drop off.
Yeah. I guess the thing I'm looking at when it comes to the Leafs, I know the Blue Jackets. Of course, there's been some guys who have been. I mean, like Bjorkstrand only played 49 games. Werenski played 63 out of the 70. Jones played 56 games. Atkinson only played 44. So you've got some pretty significant players on this team who really they weren't able to play. I mean, Ryan Murray only played 27 games. There's some significant players who can now come back, be healthy. This Blue Jackets team, I mean, there were people that had this team winning the division. Coming off that sweep of the Lightning, people were pretty hot on them. Granted, they lost quite a bit. Of course, they lose, some of their studs, but I mean, I think that people still looked at the coaching and the way that they played and knew that in the regular season they'd likely be a playoff team. I think without the injuries, they probably are competing for that top wild card, bottom spot in the Metro. So, this is a good team. This is not a slouch team that got in here. The one area, though, for the Leafs, they're in a pretty similar situation. I mean, you think Tavares, He missed almost 10 games when he went down. Marner, he missed some games. I mean, he missed 11 games. Hyman missed 19 games. Morgan Riley missed 23 games. And then you've got a couple wild cards here that by the way, Muzzin missed 17 games. Janssen missed 27 games. Like, these are some key guys for this team that all missed games. Dermott didn't start the season with the team either. He only played 56. Ilya Mikheyev in 39 games had 23 points and he gets hurt. Now you get him back. That's a guy who's putting up, more than a point every other game. Not to mention the fact that they now have brought in Nate Robertson, who scored 55 goals in the OHL, coming in, and there's a chance they're saying that because there is a chance that Andreas Janssen might not be ready to come back in time, that he might actually take a top 6 spot on this team. And
Wow.
and he has been lauded as, like, he's going to be, I mean, he's a small winger. I think there's a chance that, I mean, he's going to get the opportunity in training camp to be high up on this roster. And it might be one of the things that we're not considering is, hey, who's going to come up for these teams that are now eligible to come up, be on the roster, where they would come, probably next year, because they were talking about Nate Robertson coming up next season and that he would be given every opportunity to make the team. And, here we are. Maybe he has the opportunity to make this team. I think of him a little bit like on the Chicago Blackhawks, Alex DeBrincat. Speedy winger, taken in the second round, a guy who just scores goals. And I think obviously if he turns out to be an Alex DeBrincat, that's just a ridiculous amount of riches for a team with already tons of goal scorers. But I think there's a chance he comes in. If he becomes a guy who is a potential 20 goal scorer over the course of 82 games, he comes into the playoffs and he's able to make an impact. That's another top 6 winger that the Leafs already have, probably 6 or 7 top 6 wingers already. I just don't know if this Blue Jackets team in a 5-game series, even a 5-game series, is going to be able to handle what they can throw at them because of the lack of training in the beginning. Like, coming from the regular season, going into the playoffs, I think you've got everything together. Now this team has to figure it out from scratch. The Leafs, a much more offensive team, much more creative. They don't need the system the way the Blue Jackets do, and I think that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, you talk about like Ilya Mikheyev, right? And I don't mean to really like look forward too much, but guys like that are coming in and trying to prove that they deserve to stay in a top 6 long term, so that management maybe has a little flexibility, in the future to say, okay, well, you look on that back end for Toronto, right? And you got guys like Cody Ceci, Tyson Barrie, who are all going to be UFAs. And now if you have a bunch of riches up front, now you give management a little bit more flexibility to say, hey, maybe we can move one of these guys out to bring in a top 4D, that maybe we end up missing next year if things don't really go as planned in the playoffs. But,
yeah,
again, I think there's opportunities here for guys on the Leafs to really make an impact and make it quick. And, like you talked about, both teams have a lot of injuries going on. So, when you haven't been able to play all year long, with your solid 3 guys on this line, your solid 3 guys on this line, whatever it may be, whatever your combinations are, I think for a team like Toronto, like you talked about, that doesn't need that structure as much. They know what they get out of their 4 big forward superstars, right? They know what they're going to have on the ice every single night. And so if you have to mix and match, it's not that big of an impact. But with a team like Columbus, when you have to say, okay, do we put Nyquist up with, Pierre-Luc Dubois, or do we maybe move Boone Jenner up there off center and put him on the wing? What do we do? What combinations can we put together to maybe create a little bit more offensive impact that's going to change our focus from, playing team defense to trying to score some goals, because we can't keep up with Toronto anymore. So that to me is going to be the bigger question mark, more than maybe anything else, and even more than maybe what you might see in goal for Columbus.
Yeah. Let's talk about in goal for Columbus. I think that's a great transition because that might be. I don't know if we're questioning who is in net for them, but my guess is that we're going Merlikins, but We've got Jonas Korpisalo, Elvis Merzlikins, both of them. I mean, they both started 31 and 35 games. Merzlikins obviously had a little bit better of a regular season. But I mean, I think this is going to be a battle. I mean, training camp, you're going to be looking at both these guys because you don't know what's happened over these last few months. You just never know. I mean, a guy comes in super cold and you got to go with a different guy. Who do you think takes the starting role? Does it matter to you? Does it matter? I mean, obviously we know the Leafs are going Frederik Andersen all the way. Jack Campbell is solid, but he's not going to get the chance over Andersen at this point.
Listen, I said pre-recording Jack Campbell all the way. Just throw him in there.
Well, I think Merzlikin's going to definitely start for Columbus. Korpisalo, he's a good second, but I think at the end of the day, Merzlikins will be seeing him in the net starting this series.
Yeah, if you had said, like most teams, right, you always ride the hot hand, and I think with a team like Columbus where you don't have a defined starter, a clear number one and a number two, where this is more a 1A, 1B situation again, had you gone in the regular season straight to playoffs, then clearly I would have said, okay, Merzlikins all the way, but neither one of these guys have playoff experience. Neither one of these guys really have shown that they can, be a number one come playoff time. So, to me, it's a question mark of who's better when you get back to training, right? Before you start this qualifying round, who's looking better on the ice? Who maybe is, again, we don't know the injuries because both these guys are healthy, but maybe one guy is still dealing with maybe something's nagging that maybe he wasn't training, during this big layoff here. Who knows what's going to happen? But to me, this is a big wild card, and honestly, you could flip a coin, and I'll take either one of these guys if I'm Columbus.
I mean, here's the tough, like Merzlikins is a streaky goaltender. To start the season, his first 8 starts. I know that not like it was 8 starts in a row. First 10 starts, he loses. Then he goes and he wins, out of 13 games, 14 games, he lost 2. So, I mean, he wins 12 of 14 games, and then he loses 7 in a row. And then he won his last 2. We don't know where that would have gone. But a guy who, at 2 different points in this season, lost 7 and 10 games straight.
Yeah, that can be scary, especially if you're looking for a little stability, a guy that, because what streak are you going to get come these 5 games, right?
Sure. And you just don't know. I'd say when it comes to the Leafs and Frederik Andersen, this is his worst regular season in terms of goaltender statistics. Now, he was 29 and 13. Not too bad. He won when he was in net. He was solid. I mean, worst save percentage by far. I mean, a 909. It's the first time he was ever below 914. And he was 914 was his second year in the league. I mean, the last 3 years with Toronto, he's been in a 917, a 918, and a 918. He's been very solid. Goals against average. I mean, it's his worst of his career by a fair margin. His quality starts were down. His goals saved above average for the first time since 2014-15, he was actually under average. Now we have to figure out what Frederik Andersen are we going to get here too. I mean, he tends to have this like a history of having some slow starts in the beginning of the regular season. This year he kind of shook it, but he wasn't incredible early on. But I think that's going to be the biggest question is, I mean, if the Leafs get above average goaltending from Frederik Andersen, like if they get the goaltending that we're used to seeing from him when he's playing really consistent and he's at his 918 save percentage where he's been most of his career, I don't think there's any way that the Leafs lose this series. I just don't. I don't see it happening. But if they come in and Frederik Andersen struggles, I know you're joking about Jack Campbell. But I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility that Jack Campbell does get the opportunity if Andersen can't come right in and play the way that he should.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. I think this Toronto team is going to be excited not to have to play Boston come first round for
and
once.
then they got to play them again in the actual first round. Oh no, not necessarily.
We don't know.
Not
We don't know.
necessarily.
Yeah, that's
it could be Tampa Bay instead.
Sure. Well, so okay. Here's another question too, and why you talk about Tampa Bay. If you're Toronto, are you more excited to see Columbus than you would have been to see Tampa Bay, because that's who they were matching up against, probably for first round matchup.
Right.
Was Tampa
Right.
Bay. So,
I definitely think that you definitely want to play the Columbus Blue Jackets over the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah. And I think a guy like Freddie Anderson's going to be excited not to have to worry about that Boston Bruin team, and so. I think this Toronto team as a whole is going to be excited not to have to see that Boston Bruins team. And so I think they're going to want to take advantage of this opportunity to squeeze past the first round finally after a couple years here. And I just think they're...
After a couple years?
The
last time they squeezed past the first round, I was in high school.
Stop it. Okay, yeah. But I mean,
people are like, "Oh, the Red Wings haven't won the cup since 2008. It's such a long time."
I know.
And in that amount of time, I have seen the Leafs make the playoffs 4 times.
I'm sorry.
Since my senior year of high school, 2004, they made the playoffs 4 times.
Yeah, it's been a sad road for sure.
But things are on the up and up. I think this series. Well, I do think that the Blue Jackets. I don't think this is going to be a rollover series. I think that this series could go 5 games. But I do think that ultimately the Leafs are poised to do something pretty special here. I mean, at least in this round, depending on who they pull in the next round, it'll be interesting. I mean, Tampa Bay, I think, is going to be they definitely are coming in here with a chip on their shoulder. It's going to be hard to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially the way that they tend to come out of the gate. It's we all know what they can do early on when they get hot. So that'll be interesting. I think that the Bruins, I'm not as scared of the Bruins now as I maybe would be coming straight out of the regular season. But
no, I'm with you. I think the Bruins are overrated. I mean, don't get me wrong. You win the President's Trophy. That's great. Tip of the cap to you. But, I mean, let's be honest. Until, recently, I mean, we haven't really seen too many President's Trophy winners win the actual cup. So,
yeah,
that doesn't really mean a whole lot come playoff time, and especially this kind of playoffs where you have such a big layoff. Any momentum you had is gone. And so I think now you kind of look at it more or less as the pressure that you get as a franchise, right? Columbus, no pressure at all in these qualifying rounds or playoffs in general to win anything. They came in last year, they did great, but when you lose the amount of superstars they did, I think they're just happy to get in as a franchise. And for Toronto, I think it's just the opposite, where you have to take an opportunity like this and really succeed and maybe get a little deeper. You don't necessarily have to win the Eastern Conference Finals, but I think they do have to maybe go a round or two to really say, okay, we're making progress. We're getting there.
Yeah, it would be a step back if you don't win this round.
Absolutely.
Because, you're technically not in you're not in the team of the 16-team playoff.
Well, on the Columbus side, last year there was a big pressure on winning the first round, right? And
you're right, because they made all those deals.
And so I think there still is pressure to win this first series because from a financial standpoint, I'm sure the team is like, yeah, we want another round of playoffs, especially, in light of everything that's happened. But also for the fans to believe in this team, I think there's certainly a lot of pressure to win against Toronto.
You could say from a Columbus standpoint, sure, there's pressure to win because you want to start attracting free agents to come here. You want to start attracting more talent to come back because you lost all that talent. And so you have a good coach. You now have, what looks like you could have a decent goaltending duo, up front or back in the net. And
duel? They're going to have a duel?
They're going to have a duel, yes. Duo. So, yeah, you want to attract more free agent talent up front for this team. And so, yeah, that would be the only pressure I could see is like we win because we have cap space now to spend so we could go out and get some free agents or maybe make a trade and guys that maybe are willing to waive no trade clause, to come here. So other than that, to me, I just don't see any pressure for Columbus at all.
I think it'd be a step back for Columbus to lose this just from a fan standpoint.
Yeah, well, and Tortorella, obviously, I think you're looking at him. You know that he's not going to get fired if he loses this series, but losing eventually results in getting fired, right? Like you got to win. you won a series. Great. You've won one series. Now you got to win another one. And it's going to, like, you want to see progress. You don't want to see them go backwards. I know from a player management standpoint, this team has taken a step backwards anyways because of who they lost. But that doesn't always matter. You also want to see guys like, we need to see Seth Jones in this type of situation take over. You want to see your third overall pick, Pierre-Luc Dubois, be able to compete against the likes of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares. Like, this is your guy. He's your number one. He's on your top line.
Well, sure.
He needs to be able to perform next to those guys. Remember, this team is coming in with 2 20-goal scorers. One of them a defenseman.
Right.
The other one, Oliver Bjorkstrand, who actually had 21 goals in 49 games.
Yeah.
He was well on his way to a 30-goal season. And I know other guys would have probably likely ended up with 20 goals, but there just isn't a whole lot to be afraid of from a goal-scoring perspective. And holy mackerel, and then you look at in 70 games, 47 goals for Matthews, 31 for Nylander, 26 for Tavares. Hyman had 21 in 51 games. He's really gotten his scoring touch back over the last 2 years. I think in terms of goal scoring, it's going to be really difficult for this Columbus team to deal with what the Leafs can throw at them because they have so many shooters. I think maybe the difference between the Leafs and the Lightning are the Leafs kind of have this different ability to score from different areas of the ice where they don't, like, sometimes you have to create your space, and so the Lightning are actually pretty good at that. They're good at cycling the puck down low, and they can, they create a lot of activity in and around the net. Whereas the Leafs have a lot of shooters. I know the Lightning have Stamkos who can definitely shoot the puck. The Leafs just have this different ability to score from other places on the ice, where even though they aren't going to necessarily push you out of the way, they just find a way to change the angle on the puck and score from different areas. They don't need to be in the slot shooting with point blank on a goaltender to be able to score the way that they're able to kind of change their angles. So I think the Leafs are better matched up against the Blue Jackets than maybe even the Lightning were, and no one's going to catch the Blue Jackets. They're not going to catch you off guard anymore. You know what they are. They're also without Panarin, who McKinnon came out, said Artemi Panarin should win the Hart Trophy. He's the league MVP.
I said it here too.
You
Absolutely,
did.
Yeah.
You did. And you think now, like, imagine losing the league MVP. It's devastating. All the whole series against the Lightning. I don't want to say we should throw it out, but it's such a different team. It's coached by the same guy. I know they play the same style, but you lose a guy like Panarin, it really becomes a different series. And Bobrovsky had a lot of pressure on him to win a series. He had to win a series, and he obviously cashed in. And then now he's garbage.
Now he's got pressure on him again to win.
Yeah, yeah. But there was a lot of pressure on the core of that team to do something special. You were saying it, like, they made all those deals. They had to do that. And now there's a lot less pressure. Sometimes that can be good, but I think ultimately there's just not enough talent there to beat a team like the Leafs, especially when you're coming off this big long break, and it's harder to be good defensively coming right out of the gate.
Yeah, so let me ask you then, Luke. I know you talked about pressure for this Columbus team, and Mark just mentioned about guys who were UFAs last year that had to win, had to prove that they could be successful for this team. And you look at a guy like, for example, Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's going to be an RFA after this season. If Columbus maybe doesn't have the type of success, maybe he reconsiders signing an 8-year deal and is like, okay, well, shoot, now I'm going to shoot for 4 or 5 years so that I can hit UFA on my first, available year when I'm 26, and then piece the F out of here, because this is not a, maybe a franchise that, or maybe he takes a look at some offer sheets and says, hey, maybe I go sign with this team instead, consider those. And then, even a couple years down the road, we look at a guy like Seth Jones, right? He is this team's biggest name, best player, hands down, right? 2 years from now, UFA. Does he consider not re-upping if they don't show any signs of growth, right? Maybe he just says, okay, well, shoot, this team say they go out and get swept by Toronto and look like absolute garbage, right? Can't score. They lose every game 5-1, 4-1, and they just look like, absolute trash. We can't put a goal in the net. And then at that point, if you're Seth Jones, you say, shoot, well, now I'm going to start exploring my options 2 years from now.
I mean, I think there's some of that going on around in other teams too. Man, I can't think of one I'm particularly remembering, but I think that there are definitely always that just that feeling in a team of like, hey, we're not doing well. We haven't been doing well for several years, or at least making an impact. And
they've got a losing culture there for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Just like the Cleveland Browns.
Recently, maybe not. Maybe it's just an Ohio thing. I don't know. outside of college football, of course.
Right.
Well, yeah, you think about the Buffalo Sabres and Jack Eichel, and just, I mean, the impact
feel worse for anyone else?
The impact he's made on that team has been incredible, and yet the team they're building around him and the coaching staff, like, there hasn't been anything. So I think guys like him, guys like Seth Jones, they have the right to go to the team after another bad season to say, I want to be moved.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something if after they get blown out by Toronto, if that happens, say he comes out and says, well, shoot, I hate losing, I hate being here, the culture sucks, just like Ryan O'Reilly did, go somewhere else and wins a Stanley Cup. Like, how funny would that be?
I'll put this random thought out there with the Blue Jackets. Gustav Nyquist, he has a lot of he's got 55 games of playoff experience. His previous run last year with the San Jose Sharks, he had 11 points in 20 games. And he sneakily, he's the second highest scoring guy on this team with 42 points in 70 games. He had one of his best seasons of his career. Outside of his 60-point season, he basically has been right there. He's a 40 to 50 point guy. He's got 42 points on a low scoring team. He put up 60 in 2018-19 last year, but he was on a Detroit team where he was kind of the guy and there was nothing else there, so he got every opportunity. He got power play time. He had 10 15 power play points that year. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for a guy like Nyquist. Might be a sneaky, kind of a guy that we're not thinking about too much with the Blue Jackets, but somebody who could do a little bit of damage. I don't think that the Blue Jackets get swept in this series.
Yeah, I know the last series we talked about, I did finally pick a sweep, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there's a sweep because I do think John Torts is too good of a coach to get swept, regardless of the lack of talent he may have up front. I just think he puts in a system that's good enough where I think, if you do get, a rusty Toronto team, maybe where they're just not, maybe they're, I don't want to say underestimating Columbus, but maybe they're not taking them as serious as they should. So maybe one of those first two games they come out and they get beat. I don't see that out of the realm of possibilities.
There's the other side of it too, just on the coaching staff, right? You have Sheldon Keefe, who hasn't been in an NHL playoff series, right, and then you have Torts, who's won a cup. So I think that certainly the coaching challenge is for Keefe is going to be outsmarting Tortorella, because he has proven. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning last year, who is on fire going into the playoffs. And he's a smart coach. He knows how to use his players really well. And on the Toronto side, I think Sheldon Keefe just has an amazing team. And while I think Sheldon Keefe has done some great things, like his team is he's starting with something great. And Torts has to be a lot more smart.
Yeah. The other thing with Keefe, something I think that can be good about this break is that, he takes over in the middle of a regular season. You're just kind of thrust into the role. You don't have a lot of time to just sit back, examine things, really watch a ton of film. Like, he's been focused on his AHL team. Obviously, he knows the players. He knows quite a few players that are on the pro roster, but he gets called up. You're thrust into this role. You just kind of have to establish yourself. Some guys know you. Yeah. Now you get this break. This is basically like, especially for a coach, this is like a full off season. He gets to watch video. He gets to, he's going to examine everything. One thing for sure, this preliminary round series will have more video sessions than any series in the history of the league, because all these teams, they get 2 months, 3 months maybe before you do not know your opponent that long in any sport and any competition outside of boxing. So they can watch literally every single regular season game. They've got time to watch them all. They can see their tendencies. They can map a ton of things out. I think we're going to see quite a bit of video data kind of mixing in to each other and really being able to hone in on some inconsistencies in particular players' play and being able to expose their weaknesses. I think that is going to be, we're going to see things maybe that we've never seen before in the playoffs because of that ability. And I'm looking forward to it, because I think that's like the geekiest part of it is, let's find some little tick that this guy does and expose it. And if you can do that and then later come out and say, well, yeah, we knew that he, on this last crossover that his stick moved slightly at this angle and we had the room to sneak a puck pass. Like, there's going to be some things like that. I think especially for the goaltenders, man, they are going to be over scrutinized, which could be a good thing for the Blue Jackets.
Could be, yeah. I mean, let's just put Cody Ceci on the bench right now. Then, if you want to talk about a guy that's probably going to get eaten alive on video.
Baby. Oh, baby.
I mean, even I think of Jake Muzzin. I haven't been super impressed with his play. He's put up some goals for sure, but I think sometimes he makes me really nervous skating backwards and getting turned around. So I think there's a couple. I mean, it's always a question mark with the Toronto Maple Leafs D.
So let me ask you this then. Who's going to be the one guy in the series, for both teams, who could be a potential X factor, a guy that regardless how much, that 3 months you get to study video, that you can just come out and say, okay, no matter how much film we've watched on this guy, he can still go out and make a difference regardless. Maybe we don't have enough film on him, or maybe regardless the amount of film we have on him, he just is that good that he's just going to be able to, make an impact where maybe other guys will be able to be shut down.
I think about Mitch Marner. I think he's so creative. He's so quick. He's got those quick turnarounds. And yeah, he's a difference maker. He surprises me most every night, especially in the playoffs last year. I think he had some dry games this regular season, but I could definitely see that for Mitch Marner.
Yeah, from a Columbus point of view, I think you've got to think that Cam Atkinson is going to be much better than he was in the regular season. He's going to be healthy. I mean, this is a guy who scored 40 goals. So did he score 40? Maybe he only scored 30. For some reason, I'm thinking 40.
No, but I think I agree with you. I think this is a guy, like we talked 41. About it, the lack of 20 goal scorers Columbus had. He would have definitely been one had he been a little bit healthier during the season.
Right, if he played, he basically played half games. But, I mean, even so, he still was only on pace for 24, whereas he had 41 goals the year before. Yeah, he had Panarin on the team. That's definitely a factor. But I do think Cam Atkinson is a guy who's much more dangerous than what his 12 goals. You just run down the list. Oh, okay, he's got 12 goals. No big deal. Also, you'd like to see maybe Alexander Venberg pick it up, make 5 goals in 57 games for a guy who is supposed to be much better. Thought that he could be a top 2 center for this team. He'd be somebody I'd probably keep my eye on. Then, of course, there's no bigger X factor than Seth Jones for the Columbus Blue Jackets. If he is not Chris Pronger 2004 for the Oilers, we'll go back to that. They won't win the series.
All right, yeah. 2006, by the way, was it?
You're right. Yeah. It was 2006.
But for me,
I'm thinking of the Flames.
Okay,
I mix it. The Flames and the Oilers, they kind of went those 2 different years.
That was a good series, though. Calgary back in 2004. My gosh, I do feel sorry for again. Anyways, although I was happy Tampa did win the cup that year. But Toronto, I look at a guy, we've talked about him just, a few times, but Ilya Mikheyev, who I think, again, guy who doesn't have a lot of experience in the NHL, but he's shown that he has flashes of talent, that he can be dominant.
He can fly.
Yeah. So, is Columbus going to be able to keep up with him, know what he's going to do? And then on the flip side, we didn't talk a ton about it, but the goaltending for Columbus, right? That's going to be an X factor for me big time, because there was pressure on Bobrovsky to win because he had been he hadn't been good in the playoffs so many times before when they actually had the opportunity to get in when they did make it. But now you got guys that have never seen the playoffs that they're wild cards because you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. On the Leafs perspective, one guy who I think thought that he would be better, I've heard an interview with Alex Kerfoot talking about how he wanted to make more of an impact. I think his 9 goals in 65 games. He's not a huge goal scorer anyways, but I would look to him to provide a little more offense. Like I think he's going to come. Your first year with the team, it's different, right? Like the Leafs are a different team than the Colorado Avalanche, and he's playing in a different spot than he was with the Colorado Avalanche. So he gets this time to kind of figure himself out. It seems to me, at least in terms of what he's saying all the right things. He may be a guy who exceeds some expectations. And then on the defensive side, Rasmus Sandin, he only got into 28 games. He was there in the beginning in the preseason. Babcock, when he was playing him a ton during the preseason to kind of expose him. He was there early on, and then they ended up sending him down to continue getting more ice time in the AHL because he was kind of playing that third line pairing. He came back up in the end, and he played pretty well. And I think that he's going to be a big difference maker. Like he's going to likely be in the Leafs top 4. And if he is as good as advertised, that is a massive upgrade for the Leafs in compare. Like you said, Cody Ceci, if you can get him out of there and down where Cody Ceci should be in the bottom pairing.
He's a depth guy.
Then I think that you're in a much better position to be able to move the puck up to your incredibly talented forwards that you have to get them the puck. And then there's Nate Robertson, who I already talked about. A guy coming in from the OHL. He is going to be given a chance to play. If he can make this team, there is no NHL video on him. And that could be an X factor. You might not have the same amount of in the OHL. You might not have the same access, the best angles, or even all the games on video. So I think actually I'm sure we're to the point where all the games are on video in the OHL. But
I think it's actually Nick Robertson.
Did I say Nate? I said Nate.
You said Nate.
Nate is, yep, you're right. It's Nick Robertson. I'm the worst. I think actually there was a Steve Dangle video, and he said that Nick Robertson was a defenseman, and he talked all about how he was a defenseman.
Stop it.
It was like a whole video on it, and then he just got totally fried, and he had to come out like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said he was a defenseman. It was pretty funny, but anyways, those are my X factors in these series. I mean, the X factor is Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one for sure.
And we haven't talked about him at all somehow. Probably the other, there's Werenski and Jones, and obviously they're two incredibly talented defensemen. Morgan Riley's pretty darn good. I mean, he's a guy who last year was a Norris candidate. Should have been. I mean, he should have been top 3. He was, I think, 4th or 5th in Norris voting. 27 points in 47 games. He was hurt. He had a really weird season. He is, when he is on, he's a guy, he had 75 points, 72 or something like that. So he had in the 70s.
Yeah, 72. Yeah.
I mean, that is from 27 points, 72 to 27. I mean, if he can come in and play all these games, stay healthy, and play the way he played the year before, that power play becomes even more dangerous than it was at 23%. All of a sudden, you're looking at a 30% power play if he's on his game and picking up big points. So to me, he may be actually in terms of defense, if you get a good, healthy Morgan Riley, that changes the game. I mean, that you've got so many superstars up front, and if you have that true superstar from the defensive side, sky's the limit for this team.
Well, there's no doubt. I think we know what we're getting out of Morgan Riley. I think maybe that's why we didn't really talk about him that much, because there's nothing to worry about. He's going to be a guy like Seth Jones, I think, where, obviously there's not as much depth on defense, behind him that Seth Jones has as maybe Morgan Riley, wishes he had. But, Morgan Riley's going to go out there and play 27, 30 minutes a night, much like Seth Jones. But I think the difference is, Morgan Riley's safe. He's going to provide the offense. He's going to play the defense. Same with Seth Jones. So you can wash those guys out. The question to me is going to be, who else shows up on Toronto's blue line at that point? Is it Jake Muzzin? I think so.
I think Tyson Barrie's going to show up below the red line as an offensive defenseman, but I think him as well. Now back to Morgan Riley. I still can't get over McDavid just breaking his ankles.
That always cracks me up every time I watch that.
I think that brought him some humility and
so sly. That move was so sly.
It was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered if it was Nick Lindstrom on the ice. Nobody would complain about the defenseman that got burned.
No, absolutely not.
Let's be honest, though. Nick Lidstrom, it would have never happened to
That's
him.
true.
He would have known what he was going to do.
When Morgan Riley was, I think after the 10th game he was out this past season, my friend texted me an article about it, and he said, yeah, I think he's still hurt, or his pride's still hurting from that McDavid move.
Right. Listen, Logan Couture is still complaining about breaking his ankles with Pavel Datsyuk, so it's going to go on forever. And I always wish, I would love to see, like, you know, again, we talked about his name, but Chris Pronger, right? I would love to see guys in their heyday like Chris Pronger and Connor McDavid trying to make that move. Would have Chris Pronger just ran him over at that point and wouldn't have even happened. So that would have been just interesting to see. But I don't care how good of a defenseman you are. It's just sometimes so difficult to stop a guy like that. So,
but you can always, if you're ever feeling bad about yourself in life, even in life, you can always go and Google or YouTube the video of Patrick Steffen and the empty net between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers, and you can watch him come in on a gaping, wide open net and fan on the puck. Have the puck dribble into the corner, be taken by an Oilers defenseman, sent up the ice to, I believe it was Ryan Smith, and have him go in and tie the game with 1 second left. And the thing that, I think I've said it on the show before, the thing that people don't know, though, about that, as embarrassing as it was, and of course Ray Ferraro saying, like, I've been in the game for 20 years and you were a disgrace. Just ripping the guy. This is a disgrace. The Dallas Stars do end up winning that game.
They do,
in overtime. So
nobody cares about that.
No. It's and that basically defined Patrick Steffen's.
Yeah, I'm a number one pick, and this is what happens.
Yep,
great.
Yep. At least he's there's been worse number one picks, but not many.
Yeah, thanks Neil Yakupov.
Nail and Alexander Dake. All right, boys, I think the time has come. I need your predictions. For this series.
I'm going to let our guest go first here.
I'm going to go with Toronto in 4.
All right, so the Blue Jackets will take 1 game.
Yeah, I'm with Lucius on this one. Toronto in 4.
I am going with the quick destruction of the Blue Jackets, and I am saying the Maple Leafs in 3. I think
first sweep.
This will be the only sweep of the preliminary round. Yes, this will be I think this is the one series where I did say I don't know if it'll be a sweep, but I think this is the series where it could be a sweep. If the Leafs come out, their offense is clicking, and the Blue Jackets just don't have the time to kind of figure out their life. If they have to get into a shootout with the Leafs, it's all over.
It's weird thinking about predictions in a best of 5 versus the best of 7. I had to go through that in my brain before I answered there.
Yeah. I think these are the series they can get away from you real quick.
Absolutely,
yeah, for sure.
Like you go down 2-0, and it's very dangerous. It's gonna be tough, but yeah, that's all right. There's your predictions. I think we all have the Leafs. I think most people are probably gonna have the Leafs, although there'll be the odd person who says, "Oh, they beat the Lightning, so they can beat the Leafs. The Leafs can't win." That'll be the thing. Yeah. Any final thoughts, there, boys, before we get out of here?
Just thanks for coming, Lucius. Glad to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun. I'm excited to do this some more.
I'm excited to see your show get off the ground and going. I mean, I can't wait to listen to some more Leafs talk.
And your show.
What show?
Overtime Wings talk. So yeah, we've got some fun things coming out. You stay tuned. We'll be announcing things on Twitter and as time goes along on our show. So stay tuned for some team specific overtime hockey, like new podcast coming out of this one. So it's the spinoff. So stay tuned for that. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, and let us know what you thought of our predictions. If you think the Blue Jackets are going to come out of the gate and surprise everybody and sweep the Maple Leafs, let us know if you think that is what's going to happen. And until then, we will talk to you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the summer. And Can't wait for hockey to start.